GCF and LCM, they are very useful when we try to simplify a fraction, reduce a fraction, we need to use GCF, which means the greatest common factor. And when we try to add or subtract fractions, and we need the least common multiple, LCM, because we can use that to get a common denominator. So let's take a look at how to find the GCF and LCM of two numbers. So there are two methods. Usually for smaller numbers, we could do solution one. So we're going to list all the factors or multiples of both numbers. So it depends on whether we're looking for GCF or LCM. So first, let's try to list all the multiples of 20. So I did the LCM first. And so we're going to list multiples of 20. So 20 times 1, 20 times 2, 20 times 3, 20 times 4, and so on. So we wouldn't know how many numbers we have to write. And so you can just write down the first few. And then we're going to list all the multiples, not all, the first few multiples of 25. So times 1, times 2, times 3. And when we write down times 4, notice that it's one of the multiples of 20. So that's when we can stop here. So we notice the number in red. It appears in both multiples of 20 and multiples 25. So we call this a common multiple. If we continue the list, we actually are going to find more. For example, 200 will also work, 300 and 400. But since we're looking for the least, which means the smallest, so we're going to take 100 because it's smallest among, 100, 200, 300, and so on. So that's how we found the LCM, by listing. Now, same thing with the GCF, but factor is a number that can go into 20. So we are going to find all the numbers that can go into 20. So we start from 1. 1 goes into any number. 1 always works. And then we try 2. It goes into 20. 3 doesn't. And 4 does. And 5 does. And 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we have to try all the numbers to find all the numbers that can go into 20. And we can also find all the numbers that can go into 25. So the problem with this first method of listing, it might take you a little bit of time if you're not familiar with the times table, multiplication table. And so now we found that we actually found two numbers. One of the numbers that can go into both is 1 and another is 5. And since we are looking for the greatest, so we're going to take 5. Okay, so now we're going to show you a different method, and which I highly recommend, which is using factoring. And notice that when you use the listing method, you have to do two separate lists because you have to make a list, one for multiples and one for factors, because they're totally two different concepts. But when we use the second method, the first step will be the same. So we're going to break down 20. So to break down 20, we get 2 times 10. 2 is prime, 10 is not. So we break down 10 down to 2 and 5. So now we can see 20 can be written as 2 times 2 times 5. So that's what I put here. Now, and then we're going to break down 25, and we know 25 can be broken down as 5 times 5. But when we write down 5 and 5, make sure we line up with the same number. So for example, the first column already has a 2, so we don't want to put our 5 here. And we don't want to put it here either, but we can put a 5 in the third column because they match. So that's the first 5. The second 5, I will have to create a new column because we don't want to put a different number in the column with of 2. So that's how we should write these two numbers of 25. Now, so this is our first step, and this step actually works for both GCF and LCM. So you can do this, and then we can look at the factorings to figure out what the GCF and the LCM is. So to look for LCM, we have to bring down a number from each column. So the reason is because we are looking for a number that such that this number contains everything in 20 and everything in 25. So that's why we have to bring down one number from each column. So that way, that guarantees all these numbers are in here. So which means that's the least common multiple. So we bring down 2, and be careful. It doesn't matter whether we have one number in this column or two numbers in this column. We only bring down one number from each column. So after we do that, we multiply them. So 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 5 is 100. Now, GCF, well, for GCF, because it's a number that can go into both 20 and 25. So we are going to look for a number that appears in both in numbers. So apparently we can see 5 appears in both. So that is our GCF. And usually factor, greatest common factor is usually smaller than both numbers or equal to one of the numbers. But LCM is usually bigger than both numbers.